They do not come with horns, nor do they arrive cloaked in darkness. No, evil has learned to smile. It walks upright, it holds your hand, it looks you in the eyes and says what you want to hear. But beneath the surface, always, there is something rotten. If you don't learn to recognize these signs, you won't just be tricked by evil, you'll break bread with it, you'll trust it, and one day you'll wonder how your soul slipped away without a whisper. So let me give you the signs, not to condemn, but to prepare, not to fear, but to know. It begins subtly, like a warm breeze brushing against your skin. You don't question it, you welcome it, you think, finally someone who sees me, someone who listens, someone who understands, and perhaps at that moment they do. But understand this, they are not interested in understanding you, they are interested in owning you. Some people charm to inspire. Some people charm because of who they are, but then there are those who wield charm like a dagger wrapped in silk. It feels gentle until it cuts. These people do not connect, they calculate. Their words are not honest reflections. They are rehearsed performances, designed not to move your heart, but to maneuver your will. They pay attention, yes, but not out of love. They listen because they're gathering data. What makes you feel safe? What makes you feel valued? What makes you vulnerable? They build a profile, not of who you are, but of who you need them to be, and then they become it. You tell yourself it's rare to meet someone who just gets you so quickly. And it is rare because authenticity takes time, it takes missteps, it takes contradiction. But these people, these masters of control, they are seamless, too perfect, too polished. They never offend, they never disagree. And yet, somehow, they always win. Real connection is two flawed people standing in the open, unguarded. This is not that. This is theater. A performance so convincing you won't see the stage until the curtains catch fire. They'll give you attention, time, affection, all wrapped in a bow labeled genuine. And you will believe it, you will trust it, because charm, when weaponized, doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like the answer to a prayer you never dared to say out loud. But the cost comes later, slowly, deliberately. They begin to withdraw, not because they've changed, but because you have changed. You're now hooked. You rely on their presence. You crave their approval. And when they start to withhold it, your soul begins to shrink. You'll chase them. You'll wonder what you did wrong. And that's exactly the point. The charm was bait. You were the prey, and now the cage closes, not with a bang, but with a smile. You'll see it in moments. They charm not just you, but everyone around you, so when you start to suffer, no one believes you, but they're so kind, they say, so generous. Yes, in public, always in public. Behind closed doors the mask slips, and the true face, the cold face, shows itself only to you. You'll try to explain it, you'll try to warn others, but words fail. How do you prove something you felt? How do you prove someone's kindness was performance, not truth? That's the game. They play in shadows and leave you fumbling in the dark. In time, you may start doubting yourself. Maybe you're imagining things. Maybe you're the problem. That, too, is part of the design. The controller wants confusion. When you're confused, you're quiet. When you're quiet, they win. And here's the cruelest part. They will keep charming you, even as they destroy you. Because the charm was never love, it was currency, and now that you are in debt, they will charge you piece by piece until there is nothing left but a shell. Don't confuse charisma with character. Don't mistake intensity for intimacy. Real connection is not flawless. It stumbles, it argues, it apologizes, but it does not manipulate. It does not control. The charming ones who seek to own you are often the loneliest, darkest creatures you'll ever meet. Not because they lack people, but because they lack truth, and they want to drag you into that hollow silence with them. So when someone enters your life like lightning, too fast, too bright, too good to be real, ask yourself not, what did I do to deserve this? But rather, what does this person want from me? And then listen not to what they say, but to what your spirit feels. Pity is a powerful drug. Administered carefully, it disarms, it disorients, it lowers defenses. And those who use it well, the ones who live beneath a permanent mask of suffering, know precisely how to wield it. They don't beg for power. They earn it through the illusion of pain. They'll tell you stories, tales of betrayal, heartbreak, injustice. And at first your heart opens, because compassion is your strength. You want to help. You want to fix. You want to be the one who shows them not all the world is cruel. But slowly, the narrative becomes a pattern. They are always the one who was wronged, never the one who made a mistake. It's not a confession, it's a strategy. The victim mask is armor, soft to the touch, but impenetrable at its core. Behind it lies an unwillingness to take responsibility, because accountability demands growth, and growth means effort. Victimhood, on the other hand, demands nothing, except your loyalty. They will lure you with their wounds. You will become their audience, their witness, their savior. But here's the quiet truth. They don't want healing. They want attention, not the kind that nurtures, but the kind that binds. If you ever try to offer a solution, you'll notice how quickly it is rejected. Their pain must remain because their identity depends on it. The longer you stay in their orbit, the more your energy is drained, not because you gave too much, but because they took without giving. They take your time, your empathy, your strength, and feed none of it back into you. They are emotional siphons, and victimhood is their camouflage. You'll start to notice a theme. Everyone they once knew betrayed them. Every relationship ended in betrayal. Every job ended unfairly. And you, if you listen closely, begin to realize that you are being groomed, not to love them, but to side with them. They don't need allies. They need accomplices. If you ever question them, gently, respectfully, you'll watch the mood change. Suddenly, you're no longer the safe space. You're the enemy, because the mask does not tolerate mirrors. Reflection threatens the illusion, and those who wear the mask of the perpetual victim will do anything to protect the performance. They'll say you hurt them by not agreeing. They'll cry when you ask them to grow. They'll turn your concern into cruelty. This is how they twist compassion into captivity. They'll convince you that your boundaries are betrayal, that your exhaustion is selfish, that your resistance is abuse. You will begin to walk on eggshells. Every conversation becomes a negotiation. You don't want to upset them. You begin editing yourself. And one day you realize you are shrinking, not because they've asked you to, but because their suffering has become the sun around which your life now orbits. Do not mistake suffering for sincerity. Some people learn to weaponize their wounds. They don't wear scars to remember. They wear them to manipulate. And the more broken they seem, the more careful you must become. Because real victims seek healing, but professional victims seek followers. The mask of the victim is a soft disguise. It seduces your humanity. It makes you forget that there are people who use their weakness not to connect, but to control. They need your sympathy to survive. And when you withhold it, when you finally draw a line, you will see what lies beneath. The transformation is chilling. The soft voice hardens. The helplessness becomes rage. You were never safe. You were only useful. And when your use expires, so too will their kindness. There is no apology, no recognition, no remorse, because beneath the mask of the victim is something colder, a soul that has learned that pain is power, and that power can be claimed without ever lifting a finger. You are not cruel for walking away from someone who refuses to stop bleeding on you. You are not heartless for demanding accountability. You are not a villain for protecting your peace. And sometimes the most dangerous predator is not the one who growls, but the one who cries. There is a kind of laughter that curdles the air. It doesn't echo from joy, nor rise from shared amusement. It slices, it mocks, it lives in the corner of a smirk while another person breaks. When someone falls and the onlooker smiles, not out of relief, but out of delight, you've just witnessed a fracture in the soul. There are people who do not flinch at pain, not because they're strong, but because they've made peace with cruelty. Others' discomfort doesn't trouble them, it entertains them, in fact it feeds them. Misfortune to them is a spectacle, and behind every snicker is a secret craving to see someone else collapse. This isn't bold. It isn't strong. It's cowardice wearing the armor of mockery. These are the types who clap at chaos, who whisper serves them right. When someone else's world crumbles, they do not just observe suffering, they celebrate it. It becomes their proof that goodness is a farce, that love is weakness, and that power only belongs to those who take pleasure in watching others lose. Their jokes are not innocent. They come coated in venom. Every punchline is a disguised insult. Every chuckle a little dagger. They will disguise their contempt in sarcasm. I was just joking, they'll say. But humor, when used to humiliate, is never innocent. It is strategy masked as spontaneity. You'll notice it in how they speak of others. They never admire. They compare. They never empathize. They dissect. The downfall of a friend becomes material for a grin. The mistake of a colleague becomes a story to repeat over and over to an ever-smiling crowd, because someone else's loss makes them feel taller, even if they've never risen themselves. They cannot tolerate elevation in others. Success, joy, or strength, these are seen as offenses. If someone shines, it casts a shadow over them. And they cannot abide the shadow, so they wait, patiently, quietly, for that person to trip, to fail, to hurt, and then they pounce, not to help, but to laugh. It is the only time they feel superior. This isn't envy. It's sadism. Envy still contains longing. Sadism only seeks destruction. And their smiles, their laughter, it's never about you. It's about their hunger, their need to watch others fall so they never have to climb. Because climbing takes effort, and effort takes soul, they'd rather scorch the ladder. They're the first to point fingers when someone stumbles, and the last to reach out a hand. Their empathy is non-existent, not absent, but amputated. Over time, you'll see that their joy is not for anything. It's always against someone. They bond over cruelty. They connect through cruelty. It becomes their language. These people are not always loud. Some are charming, sophisticated, witty, but that wit cuts like glass, and their charm is dipped in acid. They host dinner tables where the main course is gossip, and the dessert is degradation, and everyone who attends feels a little emptier afterward, but can't explain why. If you ever share your pain with them, watch closely. Do their eyes soften, or do they light up with something unspoken? Because true evil doesn't always wear a scowl. Sometimes it smiles gently while you bleed, and calls it friendship. These people often surround themselves with weaker minds, because strong minds see through them. Strong hearts sense the chill beneath their laughter, but the vulnerable, the uncertain, the insecure, those become their audience. Their stage, their fuel. In their world, cruelty is cleverness, kindness is naivety, vulnerability is foolishness, and every wound in another person is an opportunity to perform, to feel, for a moment, that they have control. Because behind every laugh at someone else's pain is a frightened child who learned to harm instead of heal, and if you dare to call them out, if you name the poison in their voice, they'll mock you too. They'll say you're too sensitive, that the world's gone soft, that you don't understand the joke, but you do, and the joke is this: they're the emptiest ones in the room, hiding their decay beneath a mask of amusement. They do not need correction. They need distance, because anyone who finds joy in another's suffering is not just broken. They are dangerous. Truth, for some, is a sacred thing, fragile, luminous, untouchable. But for others it is clay, malleable, shapeable, something to mold into whatever serves their purpose at the moment. They don't simply lie. No, that would be too crude, too obvious. They do something far more sinister. They twist the truth with surgical precision. They don't fabricate entire stories. They take a grain of reality and wrap it in shadows. They speak in half-truths, slivers of accuracy, bits and fragments that are just believable enough to pass undetected. And by the time you realize something is off, the damage has already been done. Their manipulation is not clumsy. It is artful. Watch how they speak about others. Listen closely. They omit, they distort, they rearrange. The villain becomes the victim becomes the fool, and always, somehow, they remain untouched, clean hands in a mess they created. They build their version of events with calculated restraint, always careful never to say anything that can be directly traced back to a lie. It's not what they say, it's what they don't say. A pause here, a look away there, a conveniently forgotten detail, a memory that suddenly changes under scrutiny, and when questioned, they feign confusion. That's not what I meant. You misunderstood me. They make you question your own perception, and that's the true goal, not to convince you of their truth, but to make you doubt your own. Once you begin to second, guess yourself, they no longer have to prove anything. Your uncertainty becomes their alibi, your silence their victory, and your loyalty their shield. They twist narratives with the delicacy of a craftsman. Their lies are not born of panic. They are deliberate constructions. Each sentence is a thread in a web they spin slowly, methodically, until you find yourself caught. Struggling, breathless, unsure of what's real anymore, you'll find yourself defending them, explaining their behavior to others, making excuses you were never asked to make, because they've fed you just enough truth to keep you on the hook, just enough kindness to keep you hoping, and just enough ambiguity to keep you chasing clarity that never comes. When they are caught, if they are caught, they don't crumble, they adapt, they pivot. The story changes again and again until reality becomes fluid. There is always another angle, another interpretation. You weren't there, you don't understand the full story, and so the truth slips through your fingers like smoke. They often come across as intelligent, composed, even noble, but their eloquence is a weapon. They do not raise their voice, they do not argue loudly, they disarm with language, mislead with civility, and manipulate with grace. They don't need force, they use finesse. In public, they are admired, even trusted, because their deception is so refined, so well rehearsed, that it rarely looks like deception at all, and those who challenge them are made to seem unstable, emotional, irrational. The more you point, the more you look like the mad one. This is not a game of lies, it's a game of dominance. They know that truth has power, so they do not destroy it, they tame it, make it serve them, and in doing so, they convince the world of their innocence. They write the story, direct the scene, and cast themselves as hero or victim. Depending on the moment, you'll begin to notice inconsistencies, stories that don't quite line up, words that feel too polished, too rehearsed, reactions that lack depth, and that's when the unease sets in, because deep down you realize you've been watching a performance, one in which you were never an audience member, you were a character. But here's the cruelty of it all, they leave no fingerprints. Their deception is so clean, so precise, that when you confront them, there's nothing to hold on to, no proof, just a feeling, and they will use that against you. Why are you being paranoid? You're imagining things. Gaslight flickers behind every denial. They thrive in ambiguity, they survive in doubt, and they flourish wherever truth is vulnerable, wherever people are too kind or too confused. To demand clarity, to them, honesty is a weakness, transparency is a trap. And reality is only ever a matter of perspective, so long as their version wins. Sometimes it slips quietly into the room and rearranges the furniture. It doesn't always destroy with a blow, it weakens with whispers. And its greatest nourishment is not violence, not fire, but division. True evil feeds not on carnage alone, but on disconnection, on suspicion, on mistrust. There are people who don't just survive in disorder, they thrive in it. Where confusion reigns, they reign. Where arguments fester, they take root. You may think they want peace, that they desire unity, but peace terrifies them. Peace means quiet, and quiet gives people space to think clearly, to see clearly, and they cannot have that. They plant seeds, not trees. Seeds tiny, invisible, a small comment here, a subtle frown there. They ask loaded questions. Why did she really say that? Did you notice how he looked at you? They present no accusations, just hints. Just enough to nudge you towards suspicion, and then they wait. Division is not an explosion, it's erosion, and they are patient. They watch as friends become cautious, as families drift, as teams begin to splinter. They watch arguments bloom from confusion, watch alliances turn cold, and they smile. Because now the ground is fertile. They operate in the shadows. You'll rarely hear them shout. They rarely take a side, at least not openly. They pose as mediators. I just want to help. I'm only trying to keep things balanced. But in truth, they stir the pot, then sit back as others burn their hands on the lid. In rooms of conflict, they appear calm. Observing, studying, they remember who flinches first, who raises their voice, who breaks. And when everyone else is exhausted from tension, they step in, appearing reasonable, an island of calm in a storm they created. Their power comes from confusion, where there is no clear enemy, no single source. Suspicion turns inward, and this is where they win. When good people start blaming each other, evil doesn't have to lift a finger. It simply watches and feeds. They don't need to lie. They just need to tilt the truth slightly, bend it at the edges, give it a little curve. They know that the human mind doesn't need a reason to distrust. It only needs a spark. A tone, a word, an unexplained silence. They use these like matches, and when the fire spreads, they walk among the smoke as though innocent. I didn't mean for this to happen, they say. You're all overreacting. Their words are soaked in false innocence. But the chaos, it grows around them like a storm they carry inside their coat. They enjoy watching people unravel, watching calm dissolve. They will feign concern while watching old friendships fracture. They'll offer hugs with one hand and carry kerosene in the other, because their joy lies in watching people turn on one another. They frame themselves as the only one who truly sees the truth. No one else understands, they whisper, and they'll use that to isolate you, to pull you from the crowd, from the support you have. Division doesn't just weaken groups, it isolates individuals, and when you're isolated, you're vulnerable. It becomes a pattern. Wherever they go, family, workplace, community, they leave behind cracks, relationships strained, conversations unfinished, trust severed, and yet no one can quite put their finger on what happened. That's the beauty of chaos. No single moment to blame, only the residue. You might begin to sense it, the tension, the unease, the feeling that something is off, that people are turning cold, distant, and you may not realize it's orchestrated. You'll think it's coincidence, that people simply drifted. But behind it all, someone is quietly stitching division with invisible thread. They don't do this because they are impulsive. They do it because chaos gives them control. It ensures that no one gets too close, that everyone is busy fighting each other rather than seeing the one truly pulling the strings. It's not just manipulation, it's survival to them, dominance through disorder. And the cruelest irony is that they'll claim to be the victim of the very disorder they created. They'll play wounded, surprised. Why is everyone upset with me? And in that moment, as people gather to comfort them, the game begins again. They don't arrive wearing horns. Evil rarely does. It comes clothed in charm, in warmth, in familiarity. It speaks your language. It knows your fears. It studies your hopes. And when it moves, it does so gently, soft enough to avoid notice, patient enough to become part of the furniture. The most dangerous people in the world are not those who strike you. They are the ones who lean in and whisper. The truth is never as obvious as we hope. We imagine evil to be grotesque, loud, chaotic. But the most poisonous souls often smile the widest. They offer the firmest handshake. They remember your birthday. They say all the right things while slowly dismantling the world around you. And if you're not paying close attention, you'll thank them for it. What marks them is not a single action, but a pattern, woven into time like threads that only become visible once the fabric is torn. They manipulate not out of spontaneity, but from discipline. They have studied the art of perception. They've mastered it, and they rely on your assumption that they couldn't possibly be what they are. They wear masks with mastery, not one but many, to each person a different face, a different voice. They become what they need to be, empathetic to the broken, powerful to the weak, wounded to the observant, but underneath it all is a hollowness, a void not caused by pain, but by the choice to abandon conscience. They twist truth not merely to win, but to confuse. They do not seek to defeat their enemies. They aim to erase certainty itself. They want you to question what you saw, what you felt, what you know. Because once they've robbed you of your clarity, they've taken everything. They control you without a chain, without a cell. These people do not seek chaos because they're lost. They feed on it because they're calculated. It is in chaos that no one sees clearly. No one asks the right questions. No one connects the dots. In chaos, they become the one stable force, and in that illusion, they plant their flag. They will pretend to be the victim. They will drape themselves in wounds they never received. They will cry tears they manufactured in mirrors, and they will use your compassion, your beautiful, aching, human compassion, against you, because they know that if you care, they can steer you. If you listen, they can rewrite the story, but do not think them omnipotent. They are not gods. Their greatest power is not their intelligence, but your assumption of their innocence. What shields them is your refusal to believe that such darkness can wear such grace. That cruelty can speak softly. That destruction can smell like perfume. Awareness is your first weapon, not accusation, not confrontation. No, awareness, a steady, sober gaze that sees through the performance, that listens to the silence between their words, that notices the trail, however faint, they always leave behind. They do not fear anger, they fear discernment. When you see the pattern, when the mask begins to slip, it is not your role to fix them. It is not your duty to rescue, reform, or rationalize. Evil does not need your empathy. It needs your absence, your boundary, your refusal to continue the scene they've written for you. They will try to pull you back in. With guilt, with charm, with nostalgia, they'll remind you of the good moments, of the laughter, of the times you felt seen. But remember, even poisoned food can taste sweet. Even a collapsing house once looked beautiful. The memory of warmth does not make the fire less dangerous. Understand, you're not paranoid, you're perceptive. That unease you feel is not anxiety, it's recognition. Your soul knows long before your mind accepts. Listen to that, honor it. You're not imagining the manipulation, you're just waking up to it. And no, not everyone is evil, but some are, and they walk among us with ease, wearing humanity like a coat. The fact that they are rare does not mean they are unreal, and to ignore them out of optimism is to offer yourself to them as a canvas for their games. This world needs eyes that see beneath the surface. Hearts that are kind but not blind. Souls that refuse to be puppeted by those who exploit goodness. It is not enough to love. You must also protect. And sometimes protection means walking away, cutting the string, refusing to play the role they cast you in. The most profound strength is not in fighting evil. It is in recognizing it, in walking away without apology, in knowing that your peace is sacred, your clarity is sacred, and your life, your entire life, is too precious to be scripted by someone who smiles while pulling it apart.